All right, welcome to Creator Hardware. And today we're talking about picking computer components for your editing rig. Now this is going to be either pre-built or build it yourself or have somebody build it for you, but it's talking about the components that go into your editing PC. Specifically for Adobe Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve. You're needing to upgrade your editing system. You're looking to get into video editing for YouTube. You're, maybe using your phone, but you decided you want to use either the free DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro, which is obviously a paid system. What do you buy and what do you actually need? Now this is specifically going to be for PC. I'm not going to talk about Mac. I'm not a Mac expert. I don't use Mac, so I'm not gonna sit there and go, oh, you need to buy, I don't know. I just don't know. We're gonna talk PCs. Over here, I've got my main editing rig, which is vastly overkill for really anybody but a full-time YouTuber. Then over here, I've got my older editing rig, which is now just a gaming rig. I just play games on it. It's a backup in case this one goes down or something. But what do you actually need to render videos? Now, first and foremost, we're going to talk processors. This is this is the spec that's going to matter a lot in video editing. And honestly, cores and clock speeds are going to be king. When it comes to video editing, clock speeds matter. When it comes to video editing, cores matter. The more cores, better. And the thing about it is the more cores, the more threads, the more money. Imagine that. Better processor, more money. Let's talk about the specs of this computer. Now it is a AMD 3950X. Now this is a 16 core, 32 thread processor. Now the 9900K in my gaming rig is 8 cores, 16 threads. This processor is $795. Now the 9900K is, last generation's top of the line desktop processor. And when it launched, it was over $500. You can now find them somewhere between $400 and $300, depending on when you're shopping and where you're shopping, because it's last generation. That Intel now has the 10th gen. Ryzen has Zen 3 out, so this is actually last year's processor as well, but way overkill for most people's needs. I'm gonna do my best to keep this as not nerdy as possible, but the processor is gonna matter the most. If you're gonna do a pre-built system from one of the big manufacturers, higher core count, higher threads is always gonna be better. AMD is generally the productivity king when it comes to multi-threaded workloads like Adobe and DaVinci Resolve. There's always a little wonkiness with AMD, so Intel or AMD will do both fine, but you really want to step up as much as you can on the processor. You want a i7 or an i9 in either 9th gen or 10th gen. AMD side, you're gonna want the higher numbers. The 3900X, the 3800X or the 5600, 5800, you want that second number on the AMD side to be higher. When you look at a box for any processor, you want a 7 or a 9. They're going to be more expensive, but you're less likely to have to upgrade in the future. You want to get a couple years out of your system at least, so you definitely want to invest in the best processor you can afford. All right, let's talk RAM. Now, again, RAM is something that you're gonna need a good bit of. Random access memory, in case you don't know what it is. And your computer will be rated for 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes, 64 gigabytes, and up. Bare minimum for an editing system is gonna be 16 gigabytes. Anything below that is going to cause you issues. It's gonna stutter, it's going to not run well. 16 gigabytes is going to be the minimum. So make sure the computer you spec out, whether you're building it or buying it, has at least 16. 32 is better. If you're planning on doing anything with After Effects, more is more better. 64 gigabytes is going to be where you want to hit at least. My Intel system has 32 gigabytes. This system has 64. Speed is going to be based on what platform you go with. Intel generally rocks about 3200 megahertz. Ryzen prefers 3600 because of the Infinity fabric. Just understand that, you know, you want 3600 speed on your Ryzen system if you're going that way. When you're editing, RAM is accessed a lot. So the more RAM, the better. It is something that is really hit hard based on editing. So 16 gigabytes is the minimum. Try to do 32 or 64 if you can. It's expensive, so understand that you will have to, you know, spend more money to get more RAM. If you're just planning on doing Adobe and you're not doing After Effects, 32 gigabytes will do plenty. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to overspend if you have no intention of going to After Effects at all. So, but if you are wanting to get into After Effects, you will need more memory. So now when it comes to storage, you want as much storage as you can possibly get. You want at least a 1 terabyte main drive that's an SSD, an M.2 SSD for fast read and write speeds. I use in both these systems, I have a M.2 as my operating system for Adobe and all that. Then both systems, I have another M.2 as a scratch drive. So I can edit all my footage on those scratch drives, and I don't have a main drive that is getting full. As you start doing a bunch of 4K videos, all of a sudden you've got, you know, a 1 terabyte that's almost full. So you have to understand that that's a big concern when it comes to editing videos, especially in 4K. Files get big. So you want to have a scratch drive if possible. Now you can also add a SATA external drive or an internal drive to, you know, PCs like this. If you're using a laptop, you're going to be very limited. You're probably going to be using a lot of external drives, and plan for it because you're going to need storage. Video files eat up a lot of storage. So plan for it. I'm planning to do a network attached storage unit, basically a computer to store all my files because, well, I'm running out of space in my hard drives that are in these computers. I've got a 4 terabyte, an 8, and another 4 in those computers, and you know, it's gonna fill up fast, and I wanna have redundant storage. When you're speccing it out, try to get as much storage as you can. Now, for long-term storage, a spinning hard drive is fine. But for your video editing files and your operating systems, you really want an M.2 SSD, solid state drive, by the way. All right, video cards. Now this is one that a lot of people go, oh, I gotta have a you know, top of the line video card. Now first things first, you do want to go team green. With Adobe, you don't get CUDA core acceleration on rendering unless it's NVIDIA. So if you go AMD, it's going to be a slower render time. There's no way around it. They don't leverage the GPU on AMD anywhere near as much on renders when you're not using an NVIDIA graphics card. But how much of a graphics card do I need? Well, I've got a 2080 Super in this one and a 2080 EVGA Gaming Black Edition in that one, and does fine. Unless you're doing a lot of After Effects or a lot of transitions and, you know, warp stabilization and a lot of effects in Premiere, You don't need a huge expensive graphics card. You don't need a Titan. You don't need a 3090 top of the line graphics cards. 3090 is the top of the heap right now, but you know, you can get by with a 1650 NVIDIA 1650 graphics card. You can get by with a 1080, which is like 3 generations ago. 2. Well, no, 3. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on a graphics card. I mean, when this is a $700 graphics card when it came out, the 2080 Ti, which was that generation's top line, was $1,200–$1,500. Titan is $2,000. You don't need to spend a bunch of money for a graphics card. A lower end graphics card will do you fine. The processor is really what matters. And that's why I kept stressing the higher end processors. You want those higher end processors to be able to scrub through your footage smoothly and not have stutters and all that kind of stuff when you're trying to edit. Because when you get a stutter while you're doing playback, is it the video? Is it the processor? You know, you start to question everything. You got to go back through. So you want the most stable playback as possible. If you're recording in 4K, now getting into 4K video editing, you're gonna have to step it up. You're gonna have to go higher end on your graphics card and higher end on your processor. If you're doing 1080p, the lower spec stuff isn't gonna be bad. But the more you push your videos, the more you're gonna push your PC. So that's why I have a 3950X in this one and a 9900K in that one. Basically both top of the line for last generation, because everything I film is in 4K and I have to process, edit, and encode 4K footage. The heavier codecs require more processing. Now if you're going to RAW, doing a bunch of color corrections, again, specs need to climb, because the more processes you put on your GPU and CPU, the more intensive it is, the more money you really need to spend. So understand, if you don't have a lot of money for high-end PC to edit, I would not film in 4K. You know, most people watch it on their phone anyway, so I would honestly go 1080p and just kind of live with it. But, you know, once you've done 4K, you realize the advantages of 4K, you don't want to go back to 1080p. That's why I record in 4K, is because once you've dealt with the footage and have that range, you don't want to go back. So understand that though, when it comes to processing 4K, you're gonna need more. And unfortunately, this is not a cheap, you know, thing to get into. You spend money getting into content creation. It never ends. You're always buying, upgrading equipment. I hope this wasn't too nerdy. I did my best to put it down to a level that most people can understand. I can't do this video without talking numbers of specs and that kind of stuff. So remember, push record, hit upload, and as always, thanks for watching. This is Creator Hardware.